Hey, this is Jamey with Stonemeyer Games, and for this week's Sunday Sit Down, if you're watching this in the future, right now we are in the kind of the middle of the coronavirus crisis, and so a lot of people are self-isolating, as you know if you're watching this in the present, and a lot of people are trying to look for ways to connect with each other through games. If you're watching this, you're probably a gamer. And so I thought today, per the recommendation of people who watch my Facebook live chats, I thought today that I would talk about board games that you can play remotely with other people. Um, Most likely being where both of you have the copy of the game and you're either using Google Hangouts or Zoom to put both copies on camera. Although I've kind of focused my list on games where you don't even need more than one camera. You still need a way to communicate over like Discord or still Google Hangouts or some other form of like a chat room type format. Um, but or even text. But so my list is kind of geared around that. But you could use two cameras for these board games. I do have some things that I looked for in general for these games, but I'll get into that as I go through the top 10 list. I do want to mention before I jump into that a couple days ago I decided to add a game to the portfolio of games out there that you can play remotely with other people, and that is a little print and play roll and write game called Nine Worlds. I've been teaching and playing it on Facebook Live, and I'll probably continue to do so from time to time. So feel free to check this out. It's on the Stonemeyer Games Facebook page, and I'll probably put it on our website at some point. I need to do that. Um, this is an infinitely scaling roll and write game, so there are no interactions. So all you have to do is print this one page, and you can play 3 games of Nine Worlds remotely. You can even play against me if you go back and look at one of the videos that I've already posted. You can do that. Also, this week Charterstone Digital came out. So I'm not going to talk about digital games, except for one exception on this list. But this is a good time to play digital games with other people, especially tabletop ports of digital games. And Charterstone Digital, out of the gate, as a game that you can play with other people or against the AI. So that's a way that you could connect with people in this time of self-isolation and stay-at-home orders. So yeah, let me jump right into the list here with number 10, which is the one exception I made to the digital rule, and that is Jackbox. If you go to jackbox.tv, it is basically a collection of party games that you can play on your phone without an app. You just go to your web browser on your phone and you put in a code, and you can connect to people that are using that same code. You create private groups with friends and play games. We played a few of these the other day, and a couple of my favorites are one where you are collectively drawing different things on your phone, on your phone screen, and then showing those things to other people, and they're trying to guess what you drew. But you're also creating guesses so that people are trying to guess. You're trying to get people to guess the thing that you wrote down for that picture. A lot of fun. It's one of those social party games where there's no real attention on you. It's all deflected and hidden in the app. And there's another version of that where you're kind of defining a word as well, similar to the picture. We had a good time. We had a good laugh. We used Discord to communicate in real time with each other, because I think it's extra fun if you're hearing everyone laugh and joke and play around while you're actually playing the game. I think that works well for the party game format. And so that's jackbox.tv, my number 10 favorite game to play remotely with other players, specifically in times of self-isolation. But you can't even play this in person at a party if you wanted to, just not right now. My number 9 is Tiny Towns. Tiny Towns is a little bit of a marvel of a game. If you go to the AEG website, you can see where it's one of these games where you don't have to play in real time with people. So you can go to the AEG website and see videos that reviewers have posted of them playing the game, and you can actually play against that reviewer right now, even though they played months or years ago. They recorded it, and you can play against them, as long as, of course, you have a copy of Tiny Towns. So this is something that you can also easily do with other friends. You each would need a copy of Tiny Towns, but because there's there aren't limited resources or limited interactions with other players, it's very easy to play. I think if you played this remotely, it might actually be even a little bit easier than the real version of the game, because you could put the cards that define the different buildings, you could put those right in front of you, so that you can read them and you're not trying to read them from across the table. And basically in Tiny Towns, one player is picking a resource. They're saying, okay, we're taking iron this round, and everyone is going to take one iron cube and put it on their player mat. And so this is something that you can very easily do remotely if you have a copy of the game. And again, with this one, you would only need one camera. You would need in fact, you probably wouldn't even need a camera. But I think ideally you would have a camera on one version of the game, one copy of the game that would show like which of the building cards are out there, and so that really, I mean, that's all the reason that you would need to have the camera, to show the current definition of all the building cards. And you could even just take a photo of that and send it to your friends, and then play without any video at all over Discord, which is pretty cool. So that's why number 9 is Tiny Towns. Number 8, and I do have some visual examples here. We'll get to them soon. Number 8, I wanted to pick a little bit of a heavier game that you could play, because I'm sure some of you heavy Euro gamers, or even medium weight Euro gamers, are yearning for some Euro games to play remotely. And I think Russian Railroads would actually work pretty well. A lot of the games that I had to eliminate were those that had strong player interactions, or games where the information you're trying to follow, where you have to like pay attention to other players, where you have to see what they're doing on their player mat, where there are a bunch of different components, like fiddly components that you have to sort through. Even if you had your own copy, you could do it, but it would just be super fiddly if you did it. Russian Railroads doesn't really have that. If you have a copy of Russian Railroads and someone else has a copy of Russian Railroads, the only thing that you really need to see, and you'd have to put this on camera, one copy would have to be on camera, would be the game board itself, where you're putting workers to claim action spaces. And so you would just direct one player. You would say, okay, put my worker on X action spot, and I'm taking that this round. And then you would take that action. It's really, I mean, other than that, you can do whatever you want on your player mat, and other players don't need to see that. There's no hidden information in the game, but there's also nothing that you really need to see that other players are doing on their player mats. So I think Russian Railroads is actually, I think it's the heaviest game on this list that you could play pretty well remotely. That's my number 8. My number 7 is, so I wanted a game, a dueling game on this list, and I picked Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is a 1 versus 1 game, and I specifically wanted a game where a dueling game where both players don't need to have their own game. There are plenty of other dueling games like Magic the Gathering where you really need to see what the opponent is doing. So even if it's on camera, it would be pretty hard to pay attention to what the other player is doing. You need to be able to read their cards from across the table and see things like that. That would be tough in a game like that. But in Seven Wonders Duel, you basically could put one camera looking down on the table at all of the components, and the other player doesn't even need to have a copy of the game. One player could just say, okay, I'm going to take that card, put that in my tableau, and then, or I'm going to discard that card to build a wonder, to build one of my wonders. So they could completely direct the other player through the game, even though they don't have a copy. And I think that's pretty cool, that you could play a dueling game with only one copy of the game. I think that would work well with Seven Wonders Duel. Also aiding this is that there's no hidden information in the game. I had to eliminate any game with hidden information, or where hidden information was crucial to the game, just because I don't think that just can't work in this remote format. So that's Seven Wonders Duel. Oh no, I jumped ahead. I gave that the number 7 spot. All right, we'll have to switch this up, because of course 7 precedes the word Seven Wonders Duel. This is not my number 7. This is my number 4. I will jump back to that. My actual number 7 is Quacks of Quedlinberg. This is a game with very low interaction. Everybody would need a copy of this, and you would need one camera on the central board that directs players through the rounds and phases of the game. But and you need a camera to show the definitions of all the different pieces in Quacks. Similar to Tiny Towns, the definition of the different pieces changes from game to game in Quacks. But other than that, what you're doing on your turn is completely independent of other players. You have to trust the other players that they're not lying about what they're drawing out of their bag, but that goes for any of these remote games. So you would only need one camera on the game in Quacks, and everyone else can just be playing with their own copy of Quacks, drawing tokens out of their bag. I actually think this would work really well remotely, and that's why Quacks is my number 7, my actual number 7 favorite game that I think would work well playing remotely. My number 6 here is another one that I have. Let's see here. So I looked at a couple different dice drafting games, and one of them that came up was Sagrada. This is one where everyone would need their own copy, and you'd need a camera on the area of the game, probably a dice tray. You'd have a dice tray and you roll the dice and put them in the tray. And then you would direct via voice one player to take those dice out. And then in your copy of Sagrada, you would just turn a die and turn a die accordingly based on the one that you picked and put it on your stained glass. I think dice are really handy for these types of games because you can easily adjust them, opposed to a game where you're like selecting a tile, like take Isle of Skye, one of my favorite games. If we wanted to play Isle of Skye remotely, it would be so difficult because I would have to search through and find the exact tile that I just bought from you in my copy of the game. Whereas with dice, they're really, really malleable. You could easily change them in real time in the game. And again, in Sagrada, you don't really have to pay attention to what other players are doing. I'm sure you could. You could pay very close attention to see that the red player doesn't need a 1 right now and they can't take a blue die. You could do that. That's kind of the mean way to play Sagrada. I'm sure experienced players play that way. But you could really just focus on what you're doing. And for that reason, I think Sagrada would work really well remotely because you don't really need to pay attention to what other players are doing other than the dice that they're taking. You need to know which dice have been taken or which dice haven't been taken. So you do need one camera on those dice. So that's Sagrada, my number 6. So we're getting to some games where I think only one copy of the game is even needed at all. And number 5, so number 5 falls into that category. Number 5 is one of my favorite games, Scotland Yard. This is a hidden movement game, but oddly enough, I think you could play with only one copy of this game remotely with other players. There's probably a digital version of this game for that purpose. But in Scotland Yard, one player is Mr. X. Mr. X or Mrs. X is secretly navigating their way through London, occasionally revealing where they are. And other players are spending tokens to move throughout London to try to capture Mr. X. But because only one player has hidden information, that player could guide all the other players through the game. So basically you'd have a camera on the board with Mr. X revealing his or her location from time to time, and all the other players would collaborate in real time over voice, probably over voice, to say, okay, move me here, move me here. So they're telling the Mr. X player where to move them because their information is public all of the time. And so they could easily direct Mr. X to tell them where to move as they play the game. I think this would work well remotely because you only need one copy of the game. If you have one friend that has Scotland Yard and that player is up for being Mr. X, they could play the game and only one camera would be needed on the copy of the game itself. So I think Scotland Yard is that's why it's my number 5 game that I think you could play well remotely. My number 4 game I already said by mistake. That's where I said 7 Wonders Duel. And let me pause to see if I'm missing any categories here before I move on. You don't need to see other players' stuff. If there is hidden information, it doesn't draw from a hidden source. Okay, yeah, I wanted to mention this. So if there's hidden information in the game, it's okay if there is, like in Scotland Yard, but you're not drawing from a global source of things that you need to sort through and find. I think that's pretty crucial. Not too fiddly, same thing. Easy to guide. It's very easy. It should be easy in these games, especially if you're just using one main copy, to guide another player through it. Like in Russian Railroads, it's easy to say, okay, put my worker there. But if you had to say, okay, put my worker there and pick up this and pick up that and remove that resource, if you have a lot to do, it could be pretty frustrating for that one player that's kind of helping everyone else play. And generally, perfect information games help for this style of remote play. My number 3 game that I think could work really well, and there's a couple, the next 2 games are very similar, is Incan Gold. This is another one where I don't think in fact, you wouldn't even need voice for this one for it to work. It may even work better without voice. You need one player to have a copy of the game. This is a push your luck game where one player, kind of the game master, is revealing cards at random as players decide whether or not they want to stay in this dungeon or run out with what they have. And so it does have a simultaneous element to it, but basically you're only making a binary decision. Every round you're basically asking, okay, who's staying and who's going? And so you could easily, in a chat room or something like that, press 1 for, or you could just type. You can type stay or go, and everyone presses enter simultaneously. It has to be simultaneous because you need to make sure that you're not learning information about who's going or staying before anyone else. So you just type in stay or go. And beyond that, only one player actually needs a copy of Incan Gold to play, because you only need one player to reveal the cards. You would lose a little bit of the hidden information. There's a tiny bit of hidden information in this game in terms of the value of the gems you've collected, but that isn't really that big of a factor here. You could easily reveal that information as you play, and one player could very easily keep track of that. So Incan Gold, push your luck game, I think could work very well for remote play. That's why it's my number 3. Another push your luck game, for which I put so high on the list, because you only, again, need one copy. If you have one copy of Deep Sea Adventure, you can play it remotely with up to 5 other people. The only key here, the only difference is, as you're gathering treasure, you gather these little treasure tubes tokens as you dive down. You would need to reveal them to players throughout the game. It couldn't remain secret, or you could just keep them all secret and wait till the end of the game to reveal them. You could play it that way. So either play open or play as a hidden surprise for all players at the end of the game. But other than that, it's a push your luck game where you're deciding, okay, do I want to go deeper down under the water to gather better treasure, or do I want to come back up, carrying this treasure and using air as I go? Use the air really either way on your turn. One player would need to be rolling the dice, but that's fine. It's just dice rolling, it's random. So you could easily put this on camera and have all the other players watching either on Google Hangouts or Zoom or through Discord voice, and telling the player if they want to stay or they want to go. Very similar to Incan Gold. I think this would work really, really well on camera as well. So another remote game, Deep Sea Adventure. The last game I put at number 1 because it has actually been played really well and really successfully with hundreds of players around the world simultaneously. It's an infinitely scaling roll and write game, and that is On Tour. And the other nice thing about this, I'm sure the file is somewhere out there, where you can just go ahead and download the map for On Tour and play it anytime. So you don't need your own copy of On Tour. You just need one copy on camera, and you barely even need that on camera. But you actually, no, you probably do, because you need to reveal 2 location cards and roll 2 dice every round in On Tour. Only one player is doing that, so that part would need to be on camera. Everyone else could just have the printed out On Tour map and play along with everyone else. There's no interaction in this game, completely interaction free. But in this case, it actually works really well. It's really fun. You're just writing in numbers on a map and trying to fill in spaces so that you can go on a tour through ascending connected numbers at the end of the game. It works super well in simultaneous and real time. The only thing you need to keep track of is whether or not everyone's ready for you to move on to the next round. So you would need to essentially be playing this live, or let people pause the video, which could even work then, because you're not waiting for any players in this game. You're not going after the same goals at all. You're just acting independently on your own player map, using shared information, the dice and the cards, which are very visible on camera. So On Tour, I think, would be the number 1 game to play remotely right now if you had a choice. You would only need one copy of it. You can download the map from boardgametables.com, or you can Google it. I'm sure it's on Google somewhere, or you can findable on Google at least. Some honorable mentions that almost made the list are Role Player. I came very close to putting Role Player on the list because I really like Role Player, and I think in general it meets most of these requirements where you don't have to look at each other's player mats all that much, really at all. There is a drafting interaction that involves cards, and so that's why I left it off, that you would have to sort through and find certain cards to put on the table or to remove from the table. I also almost put Dominion on here. Unlike many modern deck builders, Dominion just uses the same cards each game. So you would need one copy on camera, and as you take a card, you would just say, okay, take away this card. And so the person on camera would take away a card from a stack. You could easily do that. One of the reasons I didn't put it on this list, which maybe isn't fair to the game, but you can play Dominion digitally now. And so I figured it might just be easier to play a digital version of it rather than playing it remotely. Lantern's Dice, another roll and write that you could easily play remotely as long as you have one player that you're saying, okay, draft that die for me. The only thing with Lantern's Dice that threw me off would be positioning. The position of the dice and the position of where you're seating actually matters. And so I don't know if that would work unless you could probably assign each player a corner of the table as you play. And last, Can't Stop. I think Can't Stop would also work really well. But again, there's a really good app for it, so I think that would be easier to play than trying to play Can't Stop remotely. Again, feel free to join me either live or in the past for a game of 9 Worlds if you'd like. And check out Charterstone Digital. We'd love to have you try out the game. I've heard great things about it from beta testers, and it looks beautiful. So if you're looking for a way to connect with people or play against the AI, that is available now. All right, thanks. Take care of yourselves, and find a game to play remotely with people. I think you'll have fun doing it. Even feel free to chime in the comments and say, hey, I'm looking to play one of these games that Jamey suggested today, and let people know where they can find you in case they want to play with you. All right, take care.